The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the webinar with your host, Craig Proctor.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Today, we're going to be talking about improving your conversion from lead to appointment. So as we go through our webinar today, as always, you can type in your questions, and we're going to take as many questions as we can throughout the call. So please do that. Don't be shy. Type in your questions, your comments. Now, the purpose of this call is to identify not only the common mistakes that you're making in the follow-up process, but I want to coach you through the process of improving your conversion ratio once you actually speak with a prospect. Now, every Thursday morning, James McDonald hosts a live role-play call that I sure hope all of you are participating on. Okay, I really hope that you are, because there's a very direct correlation between those of you that do participate on that Thursday morning role-play call and those that are most successful with our program, or those of you that are making the most amount of money. Now, James has explained to you how to master the universal callback script. Okay, so we're going to look firstly at some of the most common mistakes that you make when you're following up with prospects. I've listed the top 15 mistakes. Now, I want to start with these 15 mistakes, but then we're going to get into other things that you should be doing in addition to the universal callback script to help you do a better job of converting your leads. Okay, I want to repeat that. The purpose of today's webinar is not to do another role-play call like you do every Thursday. The purpose of today's call is to make sure that you understand the top 15 mistakes that you're making when you're following up with prospects using the universal callback script. But we're going to go a lot further on today's call, and we're going to talk to you about how to dramatically increase conversion with longer-term prospects. Okay, that's the hole in the boat that most of you have. You're pretty darn good with a buyer that wants to buy today or a seller that's ready to list their home today. That's not the problem. Although you can get better at that, but the biggest problem for most of you is you lack an effective follow-up and conversion system for future prospects. And that's the majority of people you speak to. Okay, the majority of the people you speak to are prospects that are not quite ready to act. So mistake number one is not calling within 24 to 48 hours. Okay, you need to call them back as close to now as possible. And there's been many, many studies that have proven that. And that makes sense, right? These prospects are not like fine wine. They don't get better with age. So you need to call them back in a timely manner. Hopefully, within a couple hours. But if you're calling them outside of 48 hours, there's a good chance they may have already spoken to another real estate agent. Okay, so mistake number one is not calling back your leads in a timely fashion. Okay, mistake number two is calling only during the day and not trying to reach the prospect at different times of the day or in the evenings. Most people have jobs, right? So if you're calling them during the day, if you're calling their home number during the day, don't be surprised when they don't answer the phone. Also, your contact management system is going to timestamp, date stamp when you call them. So, if you're calling a prospect every day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, well, then don't do that. Call them back in the morning. Try them in the evenings. Try them on the weekends. So mistake number two is calling at the same time every day. Now, let's go to mistake number three. Mistake number three is not getting more than one phone number. When you're speaking with a prospect, make sure that you ask them for multiple phone numbers to increase your chances of reaching them in the future. Okay, so if you only have their home number, make sure you get their cell number. Make sure you get their work number. In actuality, the home number is probably the worst number to have. Let's have a look at mistake number four. Mistake number four is calling from your company, calling from your office. So if on the prospect's caller ID it says Remax or Keller Williams or Century 21, they're not going to answer that. People have caller ID. Why? To screen their calls. That's what you do, right? That's what I do. Before we pick up the phone, we look at the caller ID to see who's calling us, and we're deciding based on that what calls we're going to answer. Okay, now you may want to call from your home or call from your cell phone, but certainly not from your office. Mistake number 5 is only calling once and giving up. Far too many of our members make 1 or 2 calls and give up. Okay, don't do that. I didn't do that. I would be persistent. Okay, if you're persistent and you call these prospects, these leads, many times, maybe for many days until you reach them, you'll be successful. But don't just call them once or twice and then figure, well, I can't reach that lead. Heck, if I did that, I probably would have given up on half of my business. Let's go to mistake number 6. Mistake number 6 is not asking for the person who requests the information. Whoever it is that requested the information, that's the person you should be asking for. Okay, if it's Mrs. Smith, you want to ask for Mrs. Smith. If it's Mr. Smith, you ask for Mr. Smith. If you ask for Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith answers the phone and you ask for Mr. and he's not in, you want to make sure that you attempt to go through the universal callback script with the spouse, with the other party. Okay, you're always going to, let me repeat this, you're always going to ask for the person that requested the information, but if the other spouse answers the phone, if they'll let you, go through the universal callback script with them. Sometimes it's actually better because they'll give you more information. But quite often they'll say, well, look at, if my husband requested this information, you need to speak with him. Your proper response to that should be, well, how can I reach him? Or how can I reach her? What is their cell number? What is their work number? All right, let's go to the next mistake. Mistake number 7 is accepting no right away without qualifying. So when you ask the prospect, are you thinking about making a move in the next 3 to 6 months? If they respond with, I don't know, we're not sure, we're just kind of thinking about it, don't accept that right away without using the probing questions. That's what the probing questions are designed to do, is to cut through that I don't know, I'm not sure typical response that you and I get. So don't give up and accept no right away without qualifying the prospect, without asking those probing questions. I'm going to repeat this again. That's called normal. If I gave up on every prospect that said, we don't know, we're just kind of thinking about it, we just saw your information and we thought we'd order it, I would be giving up on the majority of my prospects. That's no different than you and I walking into a retail store and the salesperson says, may I help you? And we say, no, thank you, we're just looking. That doesn't make you or I a bad prospect. Let's go to number 8. Mistake number 8 is getting into long conversations versus simply following the script. Okay, don't do that. Still, some of you are spending far, far too long with each prospect. If you spend 15 minutes on the phone with a prospect, do the math. That means you could only speak to 4 prospects every hour. You're just not going to be able to talk to enough people to make this system work. That's why I designed the universal callback script the way it is, so you can get on and off the phone in 3 minutes or less, even in instances where you book an appointment. Okay, so stick to the script. You might want to put a little egg timer or something in front of you, a little hourglass with sand, a little buzzer. After, 3 or 4 minutes, it's time to move on. Let's go to mistake number 9. Mistake number 9 is making the wrong offer. In the universal callback script, one of the probing questions is, do you prefer to buy first or sell first? The reason we're asking that question is because we do not want to guess. You must ask the prospect, whether they're buyer or seller, whether they prefer to buy first or sell first. If they're a buy first prospect and you guess incorrectly, you communicate the seller offer, it doesn't matter how good a job you do at communicating that seller offer. That's not where the prospect's head's at. They're a buy first person. And the opposite is true. So don't guess. Don't make the wrong offer. Always ask the probing question. Are you a buy first or a sell first prospect? Mistake number 10, not being clear and concise with the offer. When I role play with some of you, you're kind of weak with the offer. Can you really tell me in a couple sentences, in 30 seconds, what your big offer is all about? Because if you can't clearly articulate your offer, there's very little chance that your prospect's going to comprehend it. Does that make sense? If you can't clearly communicate your offer, there's very little chance the prospect's going to understand it. Let's look at mistake number 11. Mistake number 11 is asking for the appointment before the offer. Now, this is a subtle mistake that I see some of you making. Okay, the proper way to articulate the offer, for example, the buyer offer, you would say, would you like me to email you daily updates of all the homes that match your criteria, including any bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, or distress sales? It's a free service. You're never obligated to do anything. Would that interest you? They say yes. That's when you want to zip it up. Let them say yes. Let them opt in. And then and only then do you come back with the commitment, which is, well, when can we get together for about 15 minutes so I can take down exactly what you're looking for? That's the proper way to do it. But here's what some of you do. You articulate the commitment before the benefit. Okay, the benefit is the free list of homes, including distress sales, company-owned properties, bank foreclosures. It's free. No, you're never obligated to buy anything. That's the benefit. That must be communicated first. But here's what some of you do. You would say, well, when's a good time for us to get together so I can take down your criteria, so I can email you daily updates of all the homes that match your criteria, including any bank foreclosures, company-owned properties, or distress sales? It's a free service, and you're never obligated to do anything. Would that interest you? Can everybody see why that doesn't work? The cat is out of the bag. You've already articulated the commitment by saying, well, when can we get together so you can't do this backwards. It has to be benefit, then get them to say yes, and then communicate the commitment. It can't be commitment before benefit. Let's go to number 12. Mistake number 12 is not determining when they really need to be followed up with. And heck, this is a mistake I used to make a lot earlier in my career. I mean, if they were ready to act now, I kind of got that. If they're ready to buy or sell today, I understood that. The problem was most prospects aren't, as I discussed earlier. Most prospects that you and I speak to are not ready to buy or sell today. They're going to do something 2, 3, 6 months down the road. And I would simply ask them, is it okay if I follow up with you at a later time? Which is a good question to ask, by the way. We call this permission marketing, because if they say no, buzz off, well, I know not to waste my time following up with this person. So you do want to ask, would it be okay if I follow up with you at a later time? But when they say yes, the obvious no-brainer question to ask is, well, when do you think would be a good time for me to do that? Like a dummy, I didn't do the second part. I would only ask, is it okay if I follow up with you at a later time? So I was smart enough to do that. They would say yes. And then I would guess. I would guess. I would make a subjective decision. Well, it kind of sounded like they might do something in 3 or 4 months. So, I'll cut it in half, which is smart. You always want to cut the time frame in half. So I'll call them back in 2 months. But why not ask? And still cut it in half, but don't guess. Because many, many, many times you will guess incorrectly. So again, when you feel they represent future business, you're going to say, would it be okay if I follow up with you at a later time? 90% of them will say yes. Then when they say yes, that's when you're going to say, well, when would be a good time to do that? When would be a good time for me to call you again? Whatever time frame they give you, just cut it in half. Let's go to number 13. Mistake number 13 is it's what I just said, not setting a callback for half the time. It's a mistake. And I'm going to talk about this in a few minutes, why it's a mistake. But I think we can see how or why a prospect who sees us as a salesperson might want to arbitrarily tell us a time frame that's a little bit longer than it really is, because they don't want to be pressured. Mistake number 14, delegating calls to unskilled assistants. I want you all to understand that this is a rainmaker activity. I would rather you delegate the buyer and seller appointments and be on the phone. But many of you don't see the phone work as important. And I want to stress on today's webinar how this is the ball game. This is what's most important. And for me, I knew that I could make more money on the phone calling back my leads than I could out in the field. I could make more money setting up the appointments on the phone than I could going out to the appointments. And so can you. Think of about how many appointments I could make in 2 hours in an evening. I could make a lot more money doing that than running around. I mean, how many homes could I list in 2 hours in that same evening? So, and plus it's also way easier to hire team members to go out and work with the buyers and sellers. Now, you are going to get to a point where you'll have so many leads coming in that you won't be able to call them all yourself. And we're going to talk a little later in the webinar about hiring an inside sales agent to help you, not to replace you, but to help you by calling the overflow. All right, let's go to the final mistake, number 15. The final mistake, mistake 15, is not scheduling time into your schedule to ensure that these calls get made. You must treat follow-up like it's a listing appointment. If you had a listing appointment this evening at 7 o'clock, that would be in your day timer, and nothing would get in the way of that, right? You've got to create a perfect week for yourself, and that's what I did. I scheduled 2 hours Monday evenings, 2 hours Thursday evenings, and 2 hours Saturday morning to call back all of my leads. Okay, now, of course, you can cheat in between those times, and you should be, as leads come in. If you're not with a buyer or seller, you can call back, you're going to be calling back your leads in between those times. But at least I knew that those 6 hours every single week were reserved for making my callbacks. Nothing got in the way of that. Even if somebody on a Monday evening said, hey, I want to list my home, I would try to push that listing appointment off till Tuesday evening, because Monday evenings I was committed, absolutely committed to following up my leads. And it makes no sense to generate leads in the first place if you're not going to be disciplined enough to follow them up. Now, we're going to talk in our webinar here today on what it is that you can do in addition to the personal follow-up calls. Okay, so I want to take you a little deeper in our discussion here today and explain to you exactly what I did in addition to these personal phone calls that I made. Now, the system I described to you at the Super Conference includes phone calls, okay, live phone calls, but also voice broadcast. Okay, I would use voice broadcasting. I would use direct mail letters. I would mail my Market Watch newsletter. Many of you still today do not have a newsletter. I used my VIP Home Hunter service, and the Gold Plan mailings. Okay, all of these were critical in my follow-up. All my communication is personalized. My communication is regular and it's frequent. And the information presented addressed real consumer wants and needs. So I wasn't, mailing them useless information. My newsletter wasn't filled with recipes on how to make an apple pie. It was real, valuable information. For the hundreds of leads that poured into my automatic reverse prospecting system, the goal of my follow-up system was to stay top of mind, to create top of mind consciousness. In fact, my automatic reverse prospecting system was so effective in my marketplace that a high percentage of homeowners who were looking to buy or sell a home would fall into my net. At some point, they would fall into my marketing net. At some time or another, they would request information from me. But without an effective way of staying in touch with these prospects, 80% of them will be lost. And I know this is true because I did the research myself many years ago. Before I had my follow-up system perfected, I kind of knew I wasn't converting as many of these prospects as I should be. But when I did the research, I was shocked. I was shocked to find that 82% of the seller leads that I generated had listed with another agent. You see, what I did is I cross-matched all of my new listings, all of the listings on MLS, okay, on the hot sheets every day. I cross-referenced that with my own personal database. So every day, and you could do the same thing, as new listings come up on the hot sheets on MLS, I had my assistant, okay, cross-reference those with our database of sellers. Okay, these are sellers that I had generated through my marketing over the last 12 months or so. And I was shocked to discover that 82% of my seller prospects had listed their home with another agent within 12 months. You understand this? These were home sellers who had responded to my marketing. I had sent them information. They'd raised their hands and drawn attention to the fact that they were in the market to sell and possibly buy. And guess what? True to their word, they did. But because my follow-up was lacking, I wasted these leads. And these people listed their homes with my competitors. And I blew it. How many of you are making this mistake? How many of you would dare to do that? To cross-reference every day the new listings on MLS with your database. These were prospects that told me they were thinking of moving. They raised their hands, they qualified themselves, but because my follow-up system was lacking, like not very good at all, I lost these prospects to other agents. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this. Okay, inconsistent follow-up. And it's not just me, it was from my team members. See, I was pretty committed and driven to make this work for me. Not only to work with now business, but I was pretty committed to work with the future business and make the necessary follow-up calls to these longer-term prospects. But my team members, and probably your team members, they don't seem to demonstrate that same capacity. So I took steps to solve this problem in a couple ways. Number one, I created a new position called Inside Sales Agent. Number two, I created an advanced follow-up system for my very best seller prospects. That's my gold plan. And thirdly, I created an advanced buyer profile system, my VIP Home Hunter service. And we're going to go through each one of these now. Let's start with Inside Sales Agent. you should be making as many calls as you possibly can, but at some point, as you start to generate more and better leads, because that's the natural thing that should happen, right? As you're further involved in this program, you're going to become better and better and better at lead generation. At some point, you won't be able to call them all. And that's the problem I had. I mean, up until then, it should be you calling these leads. Then when you have too many leads to follow up, you should be cherry picking the best leads, and the overflow should go to your inside sales agent. So the sole function of my inside sales agent was to maintain regular telephone contact with my database and move these prospects along. So you might want to do this. You might want to make the first call to new leads, establish whether these buyer or sellers are now business. If they are, you can book the appointments, either go out on these appointments yourself or delegate the buyer and seller appointments to your outside sales agents, and then give all of the prospects that represent future business to your inside sales agent. So you could start by doing that. Imagine you cherry pick all the now business, and anybody that represents a longer term follow-up, those leads would be given to your inside sales agent. Okay, next let's talk about my gold plan. You'll remember that I created this advanced follow-up system for seller prospects because there were some great leads that were slipping through the cracks. Okay, these leads would end up listing with other agents between my follow-up calls. You know the ones I'm talking about? This is a seller prospect that you speak with today, and they tell you that they're absolutely going to be moving in 6 months. And you do what you should do, which is to cut your callback time in half. But still, there's something that happens. In the date the prospect gives you, even though you compensated by cutting it in half, their timing changes, and you find them listed on the hot sheets with somebody else. And there's a few reasons for this. If you look at your prospects, they pretty much split up this way, a third, a third, a third. Let me explain what I'm talking about. About a third of the prospects I speak with are honest and realistic about their moving plans. In other words, they're open, although not necessarily committed to listing with me, but they're open to listing with me. And the time frame they give me is pretty accurate, and guess what? Nothing changes for them. They tell me they're going to be listing their home in 6 months, and they're true to their word. They list their home in 6 months. You know, with me or without me, that's not the issue, but they do list their home in the time frame they give us. That's about a third of them. However, there's another third of prospects that I speak with that are not so open to me. Okay, they see me as a salesperson or some other negative. Maybe they have a relative in the business. As a result, they arbitrarily give me a date that's longer than it really is just to get rid of me. And then there's a final third of prospects whose timing changes. They truly think they're going to move, let's say in 6 months, but then something happens in their life. You know, the transfer gets moved up or whatever, and they end up listing their home a lot earlier than they themselves thought they would be listing. You know, they end up listing their home way earlier than what they originally thought. In the latter two cases, I'm going to follow up as scheduled, but I'm going to find that they listed with somebody else. So even though I scheduled my call back based on what they told me, there's always the possibility that something could go wrong. Okay, that you and I are going to miss the opportunity, and I want you to write this down, due to the unpredictability of client timing. Okay, please write that down. The unpredictability of client timing. That's the fly in the ointment. Is something in their life changes and their timing changes. So while you and I have tried to systemize the follow-up process, there's just too much of this unpredictable hit and miss aspect of follow-up. So that's why I created the goal plan. The goal plan was created to reverse the follow-up process with your bestseller prospects by compelling those prospects to automatically call you when they're ready to make a move. Okay, so rather than you laboriously having to keep following up with them, I mean, really, you'd have to call them every day, right? You're trying to hit the timing right. Very difficult to do. So from my point of view, I just want to set up a situation where they're not going to forget about me. That even if I call them at the wrong time, if my marketing's strong enough, hopefully they'll call me. And if I can get face-to-face with them, I know I've got a 90% chance of getting that listing. So that's the idea with the goal plan, is because of this unpredictability of client timing. Wouldn't it be great if the goal plan mailings would cause a situation that even if you and I mess up and we don't call them at the right time, we forget, or our follow-up call was set at the wrong time, or something changes in the life of the prospect, and instead of them moving in 6 months, something changes, now they're going to move in 3 months. I wanted to reverse this and make sure that the prospect calls you and I. That's the idea behind the goal plan mailings, is the marketing is going to be so good that even if you and I mess up and we don't call them at the right time, they're going to call us at the right time. Okay, next, let's move on to the VIP Home Hunter service for buyers. My VIP Home Hunter service is positioned as a very important USP, unique selling proposition for me. This service gives buyers the ability to get priority access to hot new listings that match their home buying criteria. And it doesn't matter which company the properties are listed with. After identifying their home buying criteria, this is a non-threatening, one-stop shopping service that emails the buyers all the hot new listings that match their home buying criteria. So it gives buyers the ability to preview the homes themselves by doing drive-bys in any homes that catch their interest. And then all we ask is that they contact us if there's a home that they want to view. So I market this as really giving them priority access to hot new listings so they can beat out other buyers to the best deals. Now, if you take all of these programs together, okay, I'm vastly improving my lead conversion. Okay, so this marketing, it's a layered approach. If you do everything that I'm talking about today, you're going to plug these holes in your business. Understand, this is the opportunity. The major opportunity for most of you is to stop losing the people that are already contacting you. Most of these represent future business, and for many of you, you're not prepared for this. You don't have the systems in place to build this top-of-mind awareness to cause these future prospects to remember who you are and to get them to contact you when they're ready to buy or sell, in case you mess up and you don't call them at the right time. So let's talk troubleshooting. And again, if you have questions or comments, please type them in. We'll take audio questions as well here shortly. But I'd like to get interactive with this webinar and take as many questions as we can. But let's talk about troubleshooting. The most common complaint I heard from my team members regarding follow-up was they'd say, well, Craig, we get lots of leads, but the leads are no good. Now, how many of you have heard that? And if you don't have team members, maybe you're the one saying that. Maybe you're saying that to your coach. Well, you know, I'm generating lots of leads with your system, but the leads are no good. Some of you are getting stuck on this point. Your problem before was finding leads. Okay, you were cold calling perhaps, you were begging for referrals. So now with our system, you've reversed that. You've reversed cold call prospecting. That's why we call it the automatic reverse prospecting system, because now prospects are contacting you. Your problem now might be finding the time and energy to follow up with these leads. Please do not fall into the trap of undervaluing these leads. I have scientifically challenged this in my own business, as I just explained to you a few minutes ago. 80% of my seller leads, these people ended up listing their home with another real estate agent within 12 months. So it wasn't that the leads weren't any good, the real truth was my follow-up wasn't any good. Many agents don't want to be bothered with the follow-up phone calls. They just don't. That's the truth of the matter. They want somehow this process to be completely automatic. And in reality, the truth is there are key manual steps which must be followed. Also, there's some of you that are not sure what you should be saying on subsequent calls. Okay, so I want to address this. I want to address the role of your inside sales agent to make sure you understand the importance of eventually getting an inside sales agent. I want you to understand the proper way to use the Gold Plan mailings and the VIP Home Hunter service. And I want to make sure that you understand how to properly use the scripts. Okay, so it's very important to understand that all of these items must work together. Okay, and one of them can't replace the other. If you try to automate your follow-up process by using only the Gold Plan or only the VIP Home Hunter service, your chances are you're going to fail. So let's have a look at why. First of all, let's have a look at the role of this inside sales agent. And arguably, this is the hardest position to recruit for. It just is. Why? Because most agents want to run out there and work with buyers and sellers. That's the fun part of the job, right? So your inside sales agent is a special kind of agent. Unlike your high D or high I buyer agents who love to be on the go, meeting with people, making things happen, your inside sales agent, of course, must have some D and I, but they also must have some C, and they must have some S. Okay, they must have some S, steadiness, and a good dose of C, which gives them the attention to detail that's going to be required for this position. So when I recruit an inside sales agent, I'm looking for an agent who's great on the telephone, but who also has the discipline to stay on the telephone all day. Okay, this person must have the insight and the ability to push the process along, but I'm not looking for a manipulator. I'm looking rather for a facilitator, not someone who forces an answer, but rather someone who knows how to dig in order to reveal an answer. So you've got to hire very carefully for this position. You must use the DISC personality test and be clear about what this position's all about from the onset. Also, please don't position this as an interim position. That'll ultimately they're going to be promoted to a buyer agent. This must be explained as a position on its own. A buyer agent and an inside sales agent have very different strengths and needs. An inside sales agent won't crave the out and about face-to-face meetings that a buyer agent would crave. The right person for this position is somebody that's going to value having set hours. See, my inside sales agents always knew when they would be working. I gave them a set 40-hour work week. And they also value predictable income. I gave them a base salary plus commission. So they knew even if they had a bad week, they'd make $500 a week. because I was giving them a $500 a week base salary plus 10% commission. And they're going to accept their responsibility of following up on the phone. That's their job. Okay, they're not going to try to shortcut telephone follow-up because that's their job. See, here's the problem. When I tried to give my leads to my outside sales agents, let's say to my buyer agents, if I gave 20 leads to one of my buyer agents, they'd call the first 2 or 3, book a buyer appointment, and boom, they'd be out the door. And the other 17 leads would never get called. And that's why it doesn't work. Some of you may know that because you've already tried to give these leads to your team members. They don't value the leads like you do. Okay, next let's talk about the proper way to use the Gold Plan and the VIP Home Hunter service. Okay, the purpose of my automatic reverse prospecting system is to get prospects to tell you when they're moving. Everybody get that? The purpose of your lead generation system is to simply get buyers and sellers to raise their hands and say, I'm moving. However, the purpose of my advanced follow-up systems, the Gold Plan system and the Home Hunter service, is to automatically get them to tell you when. That's a big idea. Did everybody get that? The lead generation system, that purpose of that is to get prospects to raise their hand and say, I'm in the market. But with the Gold Plan system, we're going to get prospects to tell us when. Now, for buyer prospects, it makes sense to initiate the VIP Home Hunter service right away. Okay, it's easy. It's an inexpensive way of staying in touch with buyers, and it gives them relevant, customized information. Okay, that's designed to get them to automatically raise their hands when they're ready to act. Now, I'm going to stress this again. This should not be done in place of your follow-up calls. So you can't just set your buyers up to get automatic daily emails of homes that match their criteria and then never follow up with them on the phone. Instead, the Home Hunter service is a follow-up tool which is intended to supplement your regular phone calls. Okay, it becomes a natural basis, in fact, for the conversations you're going to have with them. Instead of calling with nothing specific to say, you're now going to be able to speak with them about the information, the homes that they're receiving. And you're going to be able to identify whether you're sending them the right information or whether you need to modify their criteria or alter, maybe their timing's changed. Okay, so you can't just stick a buyer on automatic daily emails and expect them to convert. You must be on the phone with them every week, every other week, depending on their timing. Okay, the shorter their time frame, the more often you're going to be on the phone with them. Now, your seller prospects are a little bit different. As soon as you identify a future seller prospect, you should be launching your Market Watch newsletter and then initiating a sequence of follow-up calls. Now, you should not be automatically placing all of your seller prospects on the Gold Plan. Let me repeat that. You should not be automatically putting all your seller prospects on the Gold Plan. The Gold Plan is only intended for seller prospects who have clearly, specifically told you that they intend to list their home. Okay, they're very upfront and vocal about their intentions. They're telling you exactly why they're moving and when they're moving. And if the why and when is within 3 to 6 months, that's your cue. These people need to go on the Gold Plan. Okay, it's their very specific timing which defines them as a prospect that you should be placing on the Gold Plan mailings. Everybody understands this, right? You follow up with a prospect. Most seller prospects say this. When you ask them if they're thinking about making a move, they respond with non-specific stuff, right? They respond by saying, I don't know, we're not sure, we're just thinking about it. But 1 or 2 out of 10 are very upfront and vocal with their plans. They say, you know, it's funny that you called. I'm being transferred. I'm going through a divorce. I bought new construction, whatever. They tell you exactly why they're moving, and they tell you when they're moving, and they're true to their word. So I came to the conclusion many years ago, you know, I can spend a lot more money and time on those type of sellers. But I wasn't. I was treating all of the leads the same. And you are too. Does everybody understand that mistake? Clearly, every once in a while, when you talk to a seller, they're more upfront and vocal with their intentions. When you've got a seller on the phone that's, you know, they're hopping up and down on the other end of the phone, telling you exactly when and where they're moving, don't you think you and I should be spending a little bit more time, money, and effort on those guys versus the other sellers that say, I don't know, you know, we're kind of just thinking about it. So the gold plan mailings will cost you about $1 a piece. So here's the question. Would you spend $12 more to lock up a for sure listing? I would. That's how dumb I was earlier in my career. I was treating all the leads the same. I had one follow-up process, a blanket follow-up process for all sellers. And that's just dumb because some sellers are better than others. So we need to ramp up our follow-up when we identify we've got one of these golden prospects on the phone. When they're hitting you on the head with a 2x4 saying, pay attention to me, I'm a for sure, I'm going to do it, that's your cue to launch the gold plan. Now, some members have used the gold plan incorrectly. You see, they put all of their seller prospects on the gold plan, perhaps as a way of trying to evade or replace all of the telephone calls. Okay, rather than segment their database in terms of readiness to list, they automatically just start mailing out the gold plan letters to every seller prospect, and that's a huge mistake for a couple reasons. Number one, it's not enough to simply follow up by email or mail. Okay, I like mail better than email, in fact, because as you probably know, you don't get all your emails now, right? We get so many emails today that email is pretty much being rendered useless. Half my emails go into spam. These are emails I really want. They go into spam. I don't see them unless I go into my spam folder. And then even the emails that we want to read, I get so many emails in a day, even stuff I want to see gets lost. That's why I like direct mail, good old direct mail, because hardly anyone does it. You hand address your mailing pieces. It looks like they're getting a letter from a friend, and people do sort their mail over the garbage can, but everybody eventually goes to the mailbox. So you must maintain a regular process of voice-to-voice contact in addition to the emails and the mailings. It's not, I'm going to repeat this again, it's just not enough just to email prospects or mail them stuff. You also have to talk to them on a regular basis on the telephone. And this is true for any prospect. Without this personal contact, you will be forgotten about. Other realtors in your marketplace who do make these individual phone calls and do keep themselves top of mind will steal your business because the prospects are going to feel that that realtor was more attentive. Here's the irony. Even if what your competitors have to say is not as compelling as what you've written in your emails or in your direct mail letters. Without a regular plan of telephone follow-up, you are going to lose many, many prospects due to poor timing. Not that you didn't set your follow-up time based on what they said, but something changed in their life. That transfer got moved up. Okay, number two, you should not put a seller prospect on gold plan who's moving in greater than 6 months. If the prospect's a year away or 2 years away from listing their home, the problem is you're going to exhaust the usefulness of these mailings. Okay, they're not going to remember what you mailed to them months and months ago. The goal plan is for seller prospects only. And it's for seller prospects that are going to be taking action in 6 months or less. Now, of course, many of these seller prospects will also be buyers. Prospects, though, that are strictly buyers should not be placed on the goal plan. And I'll repeat this again, the goal plan follow-up system is for sellers. If you have a prospect that's only a buyer, these buyer-only prospects should be placed on your VIP Home Hunter service. Okay, let's go back to this universal follow-up script. And again, type in your questions and comments because we're going to go to them very shortly. Okay, back to the universal callback script for a second. There's a certain amount of skill required when speaking one-on-one with prospects if you want to be successful with the universal callback script. Okay, you're going to need some skill to convert them to appointments. Now, at first, of course, you're totally uncomfortable with this script because they're Craig's words, they're not your words, but that'll change with use. Okay, as you understand the script by using it and you become successful, it'll become your script. For many of you, you've already said that these are your words now, not mine. And as you have more success, you'll speak with more confidence or conviction, and that will continue to happen. The more you use it, the better you get, the greater the results, and on and on and on. Now, if you follow up the universal callbacks, if you follow up with the universal callback script, are you getting the results that you should be? And are people trying to get rid of you? And if they're trying to get rid of you, especially on a second or third, or let's call these subsequent phone calls, what can you be saying to them, okay, to keep the conversation going? I want to talk about that in a minute. But on that first phone call, the probing questions are vitally important, and they're there for a reason. Let's just review those for a second. Okay, here are the probing questions in the universal callback script. If you were to move, where would you be moving to? If you were to move, when might that be? If you decide to move, do you have a realtor to help you? And then, of course, would you like to receive either the free home hunter service or a free home evaluation? Would you like to receive my monthly newsletter to keep you in touch with what's happening in the marketplace? These are probing questions. Let's next talk about your subsequent follow-up. Okay, following up with prospects who are no longer a new lead. Okay, so most of you have a pretty good grasp of what you should be saying to brand new leads. Okay, a brand new lead is defined as a prospect that's contacted you for information. You've not yet talked to them, and you're going to be using the universal callback script exactly the way it's written out. You're going to use that verbatim. But let's discuss how you should handle the second, third, and fourth call. Okay, these are defined as subsequent phone calls. Okay, what do you say to somebody the second time, the third time? Adrian, if we can go to the coaching site, you'll find in attachments that I've given you some ideas. Okay, you can all find this. Just do what Adrian's doing here. I don't want you to do this now, though, but just know it's there. But if you go under attachments, you're going to find in the bottom left-hand corner, you're going to find that there's some information that you can use when you're making your subsequent follow-up calls. So if you're talking to sell first prospects, one of your reasons or excuse for following up with them, just to give them some of the recent home sales in their area. Okay, with buyers, there's reasons or excuses to follow up with them. You want to follow up with them to make sure that their time frame, maybe their time frame is approaching, or you want to verify that their time frame hasn't changed. Maybe the prospect wanted to contact their lender for pre-approval before proceeding with the buyer process. If the prospect's on your VIP home hunter service and signed to a buyer contract, but they haven't contacted you about any of the listings, you want to make sure you follow up with them. You want to make sure that you're sending them the right information. Okay, so we've given you some ideas, some excuses or reasons to follow up with your buyer and seller prospects. Okay, let's do this now. Let's take some questions. Andrea, we're going to go back to you. We're at the top of the hour here, and let's take some questions and comments.
Yes, sir. If you would like to ask an audio question, you're on your telephone and you have a mic on your computer, you can press the hand icon on the top left-hand side of your control panel. But first, we already have some typed questions, and you can do it that way also. Just type your question in the chat, and I'll address it to the group. Our first question comes from George Gillespie. How does Wise Agent compare as a contact management tool? Are they affiliated with the Proctor Group? And will they have a template available to coincide with the coaching program?
Okay, it doesn't really matter what contact management system you use. Wise Agent did present at the conference. You know, it's our content that you're going to pour into whatever contact management system you use. And that is the best one, the one that you're going to use. We have top members that use Top Producer. We have top members that use Agent Office. We've got you know, agents all over the map. It really doesn't matter which contact management system you use. What matters is that you're going to use it. Okay, so let me reframe that and say the best contact management system is the one that you're going to use. We find that some of the contact management systems are difficult for you to use. And if it's difficult, if there's too many layers, too many windows you've got to go through to do what you need to do, then it makes the job of follow-up more difficult. So I would, to answer your question, I would check out a couple of them or talk to some of our coaching members and, you know, find out what they seem to like. But I don't have, you know, I don't have any preference for one versus the other than I can tell you that I personally used Agent Office and I liked it. But did I like it because I hadn't tried anything else? Maybe. And that's the truth. I didn't use any other contact management system except for Agent Office. I was happy with it, but is there something better out there? I have no idea. Maybe.
Hi, it's Susan Gastineau here, a fellow coaching.
Okay, our next question. Next? Yes, sir. Well, our next question is, when is the right time to bring on an ISA, and how much did you pay yours?
Okay, I brought on my first ISA when I couldn't follow up with the leads myself. And that was frustrating because, and many of you may be experiencing this, by the time you actually reach the buyer or seller, they've already done business with another agent. It was very frustrating to call a seller and they said, oh, you should have called me yesterday. I just listed my home. We definitely would have listed with you, Craig, but we just listed our house yesterday. We didn't hear back from you. So when I got to that point, that's when I hired an inside sales agent. I paid, her name is Carol. She still works at RE/MAX today. I paid her $500 a week as a salary. So that does attract a certain type of person. They're going to make guaranteed $25,000 a year plus 10% commission on every deal that closed. And you want people, obviously, that are motivated by the upside, the commission they can make, not the $25,000 salary. Make sure you also put them on a 90-day probational period, so if they don't work out, it's easy to get rid of them.
Okay, our next question is from Stephen Porter. I have generated over 371 prospects using your system, most of which are buyer leads. I'm finding it challenging to find time to 1, follow up with the new leads, 2, follow up with the previously contacted leads, and 3, going on appointments. Any suggestions for follow-up with longer-term buyer leads prior to the VIP buyer process?
It's a struggle, isn't it? It's a struggle. Look, here's what happens when you hang out with me. when you're in this program, you're going to get, the natural thing that should happen is you're going to get better and better at lead generation. So what you're describing, Stephen, is normal. So here I am, you know, and here you are. The guy doing the calling, you, is also doing the doing, right? Because you're good at making the phone calls, what naturally happens is you book a lot of buyer and seller appointments. When can most of these buyers and sellers meet with you? In the evenings and on the weekends, which is the very time, the very best time to actually make your follow-up calls. But you can't be making your follow-up calls now because now you're out with the buyers and sellers. It's a problem. That's why you're going to need some help. And what I did is I hired, the first person I hired was an agent to go out and meet the buyers and sellers. I found it easier to hire somebody like that and easier to train somebody to duplicate the results that I would get. Okay, her name was Lindy Black. She's still at the RE/MAX office here in Newmarket as well. And Lindy was brand new, maybe like a year in the business when I met her at an offer presentation. And she had no business. And I was complaining to her after this offer presentation out in the driveway in the seller's home. I was complaining. I had the same complaint that you have right now. It's like, how do I do all this? Well, she said, I don't have any business, but I'm pretty good at this. And she was. I said, well, I have too much business. So it seemed obvious. I said, well, Lindy, why don't you come and work with me? Remember, this is 1990. Nobody had licensed agents working for them other than brokers. I wasn't a broker. I was just a real estate agent working in the broker's office, but I basically started a brokerage within the brokerage. So Lindy came to work with me. Now, it just seemed logical that I should take Lindy out and show her what I do. So Lindy would go out on all the listing appointments with me and all the buyer appointments with me, and in very short order, within a couple weeks, she got it, and then I would follow her around. She would do all the talking at the listing appointments and the buyer appointments. I'd sit in the corner and listen. I would give her some corrective advice at the end of each appointment. But after a month or so, guess what was happening? She was getting the same results that I was getting. So if I was able to list 80% of the sellers I met with, she was able to do that. If I was able to get the commitment of 80% of the buyers I met with, and she was able to get the same result, what does the Rainmaker theory tell us? Remember at the Super Conference, I talk about the Rainmaker theory. The Rainmaker theory says if you can't change the outcome, don't do it. And that's what I did. I drew a line in the sand, and I said, well, if I can't change the outcome, why should I be out meeting with buyers and sellers? Now, you see, here's what freed me. Because I didn't have to meet with the buyers and sellers, I could spend all my time on the phone. Well, do you want to know what the net result of that was? Because I was able to spend all of my waking hours on the phone, not distracted by listing appointments or buyer appointments, I was able to make a lot more appointments. Guess what happens now? A couple months goes by, Lindy comes into the office, hair's all over the place. She says, I can't do this anymore. I had to hire a second assistant and then a third assistant. And then even though I wasn't eventually working with any buyers or sellers, I still myself, even though 100% of my time was committed to the phone calls, I couldn't call them all. That's when I hired an inside sales agent. That was the progression. So I slowly gave away the buyer appointments and listing appointments, cherry picking the best ones on the way. That's how it would work. You know, I wouldn't give every appointment to Lindy. You know, if Uncle Joe wanted to list his home, I'm not going to give that to Lindy. So you can cherry pick them, Stephen, as you go along. You're going to hire somebody to duplicate you. You're going to cherry pick the best buyer and seller appointments you probably keep to yourself, but give away the B's and C's. And now you've got all this time on the phone to make more appointments. But my prophecy will come true for you, because now that you've got more time on the phone to make these appointments, guess what's going to happen? You're going to make more appointments and more appointments and more appointments. And pretty soon the people that you have out there working with buyers and sellers won't be able to keep up with it. So what's going to happen is as you move your business from infancy to adolescence, just like adolescence, you're going to have growing pains. What is a business in infancy? A business in infancy is when you and I work by ourselves. And we all know the shortfalls of that, right? Your business depends on you. There's only so much you can do. You can't build it any bigger because you run out of time. And eventually, we all run out of time. So we move from infancy to adolescence. Adolescence is when you hire a couple people. It's still, your business still relies on you, but not completely on you. And then the final step, Stephen, is you have enough systems and people in place that your business moves from adolescence to maturity. A mature business does not require your presence. A mature business just is. What that means is you can go south in the wintertime. You can go on vacation. You can play golf. Doesn't matter. Your business continues to run. And that's what most of us, not all of us, that's what I certainly strived for, was a business that actually made my life better, not something that stripped away any light in my life. And when you have a business that's in infancy, that's the experience most of us have, is it's not a business, it's a job, and your job called real estate consumes you and does not work without you. So I hope that helps. That was a very long answer to that question, but still. Let's see who's next.
Yes, sir, and this is a follow-up from Stephen. You may have addressed it, but I'll go ahead and ask the question anyway. He says, Craig used to have a 6-month and a 12-month gold plan. Do you not recommend using your 12-month gold plan anymore?
Actually, I had a 3-month and a 6-month. The only difference, Stephen, between the 3-month and the 6-month gold plan, the letters are the same. It's the frequency in which you mail them. Okay, there's 12 gold plan mailers. So let's say, Andrea, that I was talking to you today and you said, well, we're definitely going to be listing our home in the next couple months, the next 60 days. Then I would send you Gold Plan 1. Okay, I would activate Gold Plan 1 so you get a letter every single week. But if you said, we're not going to do anything for 6 months, I don't want to mail you every single week. It's probably going to tick you off. It's overkill. So the timing of the prospect is going to dictate whether you activate Gold Plan 1 or Gold Plan 2. Same letters, but Gold Plan 2, the letters are spaced out every other week versus every week.
Okay. Our next guest, Bjorn, he asks, can you provide us a step-by-step follow-up plan that we can model and implement in our contact management system?
Well, the Gold Plan letters are on the coaching site. All the letters, everything that you need. I'm going to recommend that you import them into your contact management system and you create what we call an activity plan. And the activity plan, as I just mentioned, there should be 2 of them, Gold Plan 1, so GP1 and GP2. So in agent office, if I talk to somebody today, if it's Andrea and she says, we're absolutely moving. We've been transferred. We've got to be there, and we got to list our home in the next 60 days. Boom! I activate Gold Plan 1. Okay, now the contact management system is going to send my assistant a reminder every week. Mail Andrea letter 1. A week later, mail Andrea letter 2. Mail Andrea letter 3. And your phone calls are also going to be planted every couple weeks into that activity plan. So Andrea would get my monthly newsletter. Every week she would get a Gold Plan follow-up letter. So week 1 she'd get letter 1, week 2 letter 2, week 3 letter 3, and in addition to that, you would get my personal phone calls based on your timing. If Andrea was also buying, she would also be getting daily emails of homes that match her criteria. So we're going to do lots of things that automatically, they're not automatically all happening. The letters should be happening without you. That should be delegated to your assistant. And the activity plan should be reminding your assistant what to send and when to send it. Now, if you don't have an assistant, you're it. Everybody here on the webinar has an assistant. If you don't have one, you're it. You're the assistant. but hopefully all of you have at least a part-time administrative person that can take care of that. What can't be automated is the phone calls. The reminder to you can be automated. That can be built into the activity plan, but it still requires you to pick up the phone and make the phone call. And that was the point, a big point I was trying to make here today in the webinar, is you can't shortcut that. It doesn't work. I could not figure that out. In 22 years, I never figured out how to do an effective job of following up and converting prospects without getting on the phone every once in a while and speaking to them using the scripting that you've been given. Now, believe me, that would have been a dream for you and for me if I was able to say to you today, hey, I created these secret mailings or these secret emails, and all you have to do is, click the activity plan, and your contact management system is going to send a bunch of stuff out to the prospects, and eventually they're going to call you and say, come on over and get me. Okay, it's not that good. Will some of them? Yes, but not enough of them. So yes, create an activity plan. Make sure the newsletter is part of it, the goal plan mailings are part of it, and the emails are part of it. But most importantly, don't stop calling them. Make sure the phone calls are part of your activity plan. Let's see who's next.
Yes, our next question comes from Sean. When your OSA met with sellers, did they put you down as a listing agent and the OSA as the co-listing agent?
Yes. I don't know how it works on your MLS, but in the Toronto MLS, there's room for 2 agents. Okay, in the top field, the number 1 field would always be my name. Number 2 field below would be my outside sales agent. What that would mean, when people did a search for buy-ins or sell-ins, I got credit for all of it.
Okay, Roger asks, what kind of agreement can we set with a buyer's agent, money or commission ways?
With an outside sales agent, whether they work with buyers or sellers, it should always be a split. You don't need to pay them a salary. Now, your split will be different depending on your situation. For example, some of our members, some of the rainmakers, they take 60% for themselves, and they give the buyer agent or the listing agent, let's call it an outside sales agent, they give their outside sales agent 40%, and they keep, the house keeps 60%. The reason I did 50-50 is because I was at RE/MAX, and my outside sales agents covered all their RE/MAX expenses, including $800 a month for a desk fee. Okay, they paid for all their MLS fees, all their RE/MAX international dues, their RE/MAX desk fee. That all came out of their 50%. So depending on your situation, I would say normally for most of our members, it's either a 50-50 split or a 60-40 split.
Our next question comes from Mark. What is the solution for buyer leads that do not have an email but are still interested in the VIP Home Hunter program, mostly downsizers?
Okay, sorry, repeat that again.
What is the solution for buyer leads that do not have an email? And he's saying it's mostly downsizers, and they want the VIP Home Hunter program.
Well, you can mail it to them. And I'm thinking of my dad. He may not, actually my dad has email now, so there'd be very few people. I mean, if my dad's got email, like my dad had to get rid of voicemail because he couldn't figure out how to get the messages off. I'm serious. If I call my dad, how he knows I called is he looks at his caller ID. If he sees my number, he'll call me back. So he is not a technical person. He has email now, but let's say that they don't have email, you can mail them. You could fax them if they've got a fax machine at work, if they work. I mean, there's ways around it, but I don't know. What is it? 99.9% of the population has email. You won't run into that too often.
We have Philip. I'm thinking of a 12-month gold plan with letters every month. What do you think of my idea?
You could do that, but what you're replicating already exists in the newsletter. That's what the newsletter is for. It goes out every month for 12 months.
Okay, we have a question from Beta. Do you use the e-plan for buyers and sellers from Success website?
Yes, you can do that as well. You can fill in their name and their email address, or maybe it's just their email address, and they will get an e-newsletter. Now, I will caution you, I didn't write those. I don't know what that content says. Hopefully, it's nothing that'll hurt you, but you may want to sign yourself up first and make sure you're okay with the content.
Okay, our next guest, Mark. In the Gold Plan mailing number 1, you suggest I send a moving checklist magnet board and a moving checklist letter size folder. Do I need to send both, or is it just the magnet or folder by itself enough?
You can do either or none of those. BXL printers printed the checklist. So that moving checklist is just a sticker that I stick on a normal file folder that you would buy at Staples. You have Staples in the U.S.?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe we do.
Go to Staples, buy some file folders, and just you stick that moving checklist. You can get that moving checklist from her. The magnetic board was basically printed on paper, and they stuck these 4 little magnets on. So the idea was, if the moving checklist is on their refrigerator and you give them a file folder and you suggest that this file folder be used to place all their real estate related information, everything to do with their moving plans should go in this file folder, then you've created some top of mind awareness. And the moving checklist tells them exactly what they should be doing. What I like about the moving checklist is I would know by the information they're requesting of me pretty much where they were with their moving plans, because it would say, 3 months out you should be doing this, 6 weeks out you should be requesting this from me, 3 weeks out you should be requesting this. So it was almost like this built-in radar. I would know exactly where the prospect was in their timing based on what they were asking for. Anyway, we better wrap this up. I hope everyone's enjoyed the webinar here today. Of course, all the information for today's webinar is on the coaching website, Proving Your Conversion from Lead to Appointment. And remember to join us Thursday on the role play call. And then on Friday on the Ad Clinic call. Make sure you upload your ads, and we'll have a look at as many as we can. Anyway, we're out of time for today. Hope you enjoyed the webinar as much as I enjoyed being here. Go out there, sell some houses,